So my name is Nathan. 3 weeks ago, I was trying to help a coworker out with a situation with at work where she was kind of overwhelmed by the way she was spoken to, and got home really was upset. And I wanted to find something on YouTube that would help her out, and kind of knew in the back of my mind it would also help me out. So I went on YouTube and looked up things about like how to help someone with high sensitivity or high emotions. And really my target focus was, how do I get the person who was upset and came hard down on her to communicate softer, and ways to bring that up. So I so I did some searches on highly sensitive, and I came across this thing called highly sensitive people or highly sensitive person, also known as HSP. And then I started diving into this test that was made by a research psychologist that discovered and created this term back in the late 90s. So turns out I scored really high on it, almost probably the only test I've ever scored almost a perfect score. And then just a couple days ago, I took another test from that same doctor's website, and it was on high sensation seeking, also known as HSS. So these two things were really interesting when I discovered them, because the first one, it was intended to just try to help out a coworker, and then I realized that after I took it too, I was like, oh wow, this is really going to help me too. So how does HSS affect people, or HSP? I'm sorry. So HSP is really for guys. It's not going to be fun especially when they're thinking about, oh wow, I have high emotions. Yeah, that's definitely not me. So at the end of the day, how do you know if you're HSP, and why would a guy even want to look into it in the first place? Because the stereotypes are so strong with men not having strong emotions and having it all under control. I personally have been married for 20 plus years, have 3 kids, and that is just the norm. Like, I grew up in a family where, high emotions were only through arguing and fighting, like normal siblings typically do, and being emotional and crying was definitely not part of the playbook. And so I kind of like stifled that, pushed it aside, kept it to the side so that it would never really flare up or ever come out. But did I ever get overwhelmed by emotions? Heck yes. All the time. It was more obvious earlier because I really didn't, especially in my teenage years. I'm 43 now, so it was way easier to control and kind of just push it to the side in my 20s after I got married, and just kind of go from essentially just looking into like so HSP in general is just someone. Think of it more like, especially if you're the guy watching this right now, think of HSP not just as, oh, I have a lot of emotions. It's more, think of it more like a superpower, like a spidey senses or a sixth sense. Because at the end of the day, you'll see on this test that as you research it, there's lots of different ways you can see that in your life. As you think back, where have I definitely shown that that you're HSP? Well, there's so many different things, and what I've been noticing over the past couple weeks as I've been researching is that there are categories within HSP. So just because you're HSP doesn't mean you're exactly the same as the next person. In fact, one of my closest friends who is also HSP, she and I are really different from one another. So, and yet we've been similar and have known this for the past 10 to 15 years, how similar we've been. And my wife and her husband are more similar. So it's been interesting to see our differences and also similarities. But even though we're both HSP, she has, out of the like 8 to 10 categories, if you look online, there's like ways of kind of seeing specifically what kind of HSP you are. And for me, I have a lot of energy. I like to talk real fast. I've been an entrepreneur. I've been in sales. I've done a lot of sports, high intensity. Now here's the thing about HSP. It's more of crowds overwhelm me. Definitely have always known that small groups of one-on-one is great. 2 to 4 people at most would be like, then it starts to feel like a crowd if it's above 4. And I've always been wondering, like, what the heck? How can why is that an issue for me? Like, being around people, it just overwhelms me to the point where I just want to go and exclude myself from people and go sit in the dark or be away from people in the evening, especially after like a dinner time, just getting tired from the day. So for me, like a normal day at work will sometimes leave me completely drained when I get home, and I just need to just like decompress and be alone. So then I'll get home and I'll eat dinner with the kids, and it'll be completely overwhelming because they're like going a mile a minute like I am right now, but my nerves are already rattled. So sometimes you'll see that HSP, you get overwhelmed by a lot of stimuli around you, and normal situations will feel worse to an HSP than normal people. But there are huge advantages to it when you're balanced, meaning as long as you're taking breaks and giving yourself places to breathe, you're able to function and come up with creative ideas that other people will not see and be able to accomplish. So that's where I say it's more like a superpower. Don't think of it as, oh, you're just really emotional and you have no control over your emotions. It's not like that. But HSS, for me, when I discovered that a couple days ago, really opened my eyes, because I started feeling like there was still something missing for me in the way I operate. Because a lot of HSPs are cautious and trying not to do things that are dangerous and could cause them to be overwhelmed. Well, HSS is like the opposite of that. It is all about risk and doing new things all the time. So adrenaline junkies, I'll watch these YouTube channels where people are going down the slide and launching into a huge, like 20, 30 feet into the air, and doing the flips and whatnot and landing into the water. And that's me the whole time. I'm like jealous that they're doing it and it's not me. And of course, if I did that right now in my 40s, I'd break. But I want to do it. And so I do other things that work for me at this point in my life. Like I'll ride my bike. Like a couple of years ago, my wife and I had the opportunity to go to New York, and we were riding the e-bikes there. For my first time was riding in a big city with an e-bike, and it was so fascinating because everybody coming home from work, they're cruising through the streets right between the cars with very little space, and there's just as many people on bikes as there were cars. So it was really fun. We were able to just kind of go with the flow, and it was turning. My HSS was saying, heck yes, this is awesome. I love the adrenaline of this craziness. But my HSP at the same moment was getting the side seat, but feeling extreme stress at the same moment, because it was like, oh, okay, this is seriously dangerous. And yeah, cars can cut off and run over bikers at any point, because it wasn't just bikers on the side of the road. They're between every lane, so they're everywhere, just like a motorcycle in California going full speed through. That's what the bikers were doing, and we as bikers were going faster than the cars. So it was just really thrilling and exciting and new and different. So that's what HSS is. It's all about doing something new and different and challenging and pushing the limits, versus HSP the whole time was freaking out saying, this is crazy. And so where I was able to relax my HSP a little bit is by using that spidey sense and really opening up and seeing the danger, but recognizing it's there and looking for opportunities to make sure it stays safe. So while I'm being in control, my HSS is taking control over the driver's seat and thrilling out on it. my HSP is making sure I'm not going to die. So it's an interesting combo. So I'm interested in you though. If what you've learned and discovered your road of discovering HSP, and if you are also HSS as well, and what your journey's been like, and when you discovered it, how long you've known. But man, I'm telling you, if I wasn't trying to help my coworker out, I would not have figured this out. I would not have gone online and said, hey, why am I so emotional? Because really what I did is I turned off all my emotions for like 20 years. I mean, I stifled it so deep, it was like cutting me in half and making me just feel off completely. I was a wreck. 3 weeks ago, I wouldn't have been able to do this video because I was just too down. I was completely missing. I felt really unauthentic with myself and who I was as a person. So I couldn't even go and be happy with what I was doing. I knew I was doing a lot of great things for my family, providing for them. I was doing some sports, which gave me the thrill as an HSS, even though I didn't know that was helpful. I just knew that sports in general always gave me a sense of satisfaction and made me feel better. So I was doing a lot of that. In the last 6 months, I've been playing tons of pickleball. I've been e-biking to and from work, which is 20 miles one way. So I'm getting plenty of exercise that gives me a lot of balance, and it has been the thing that has been helping me cope. But my HSP was being completely stifled and ignored, and I didn't know why I was off. So it was a huge deal to have discovered it. I even went to a trauma specialist and worked on some things from my childhood that really helped, and also things that I experienced in work with a micromanager that really overwhelmed me to a really strong degree, that when I worked through some of those issues, I felt liberated. And I still do. And I can't believe how just 3 or 4 sessions of a trauma specialist that knows what HSP is, what a difference that made for me. And then I have to say, it's been interesting. So I joined a Facebook group online right now. It currently has about 50,000 members, and it's been really interesting to see how people, how different we are from one another, even as we are. If you're an HSP and you're in that group and you're communicating, you're going to start to see how the stories are starting to just unfold. Like, I just discovered it, and this is what's been going on. And is anybody extremely cold, and how do you deal with it? So there's a lot of those situations. For me, it's the opposite, because I'm in the desert. I'm in the heat, and it is ridiculously hot. It gets up to 122 degrees out here. And so 3 weeks ago, I was riding, like maybe a month ago, I was riding my bike home, and I got major heat stroke. I didn't officially have it. I didn't like stop sweating, and I was in a real dangerous situation, but I was not feeling well. Coming home, my senses were totally shattered. I was 5 miles from home, and it was just, my body was shutting down, because I normally go through sprinklers and I get cooled off, and then I get totally rejuvenated, and it feels great. It's like AC on me as I'm riding 28 miles per hour home. But this time was different because the sprinklers weren't on, and I was just suffering. So yeah, I'd like to know from you, what do you guys know about HSP, and what is your experience, and how has it affected your life, and how are you using it now for good, and making. Because there is a lot of books I've already read and watched the movie online, and a couple movies, the Untold Story of, I think is what it's called. But yeah, I've gone through a couple books, and also HSS books, and there's only so much research you can do before you start to hit a wall, and you're just relying on others. So that's why I'm here, and I'm just curious what you guys are experiencing and where this can lead, because I'd like to learn from each other, make it please ask questions. I'd love to talk it through and see what else we can talk about that would help us get to know each other better, with an effort to cope better, but not only cope, but just make it better for others around us. Because at the end of the day, we want to be not only functioning well in our communities, but we want to be able to thrive. That's the whole cool part about it being like a superpower. It can be a huge asset to us if we use it correctly, and it can be a huge negative thing if it's not being addressed and handled right. So let's talk it through and see how we can make HSP, and if you're HSS as well, make it an amazing thing in our lives. All right, I'll talk to you later. See ya.